This is the all-new Triumph Scrambler 400XC. It's a similar machine to the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 in a lot of ways, except for one. This one makes me feel naughty. It makes me feel a little bit like a hooligan, in a good way. Let's go for a ride. We'll talk about this bike. We'll talk about the differences between this and the Himalayan 450, and I'll give you my overall first impression of this fine motorcycle. Let's go. First and foremost, let's talk about how it sounds, because it sounds pretty amazing. Listen to this thing when I start it up. Right? So this is Triumph's second version of the Scrambler 400. The first one was the 400X, which I rode about 2 years ago, and thankfully, for this review, I forgot almost all of it. So this is pretty fresh to me. This second version is the XC. It's mostly cosmetic, except for one big thing. This one comes with spoked tubeless tires. That's a requirement for me these days. Not so much the spokes, but the tubeless tires. I've been dying to get my hands on this bike since the day I saw it announced. It's absolutely gorgeous. My friend Alice bought this bike and has put about 100 miles on it, so I have it pretty fresh right out of the box. If you're looking for a sort of spec sheet review, this isn't the video for you. I'll just say that right up front. What I really want to talk about is how this bike feels to ride, what it's all about, who it's meant for, and the key differences between this and something like the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, which I happen to believe is the best-in-class bike in this, class. In the, 400 to 450 cc engine range. This one's a 398. The Himalayan's a 452. So that's one of the first key differences. The Himalayan has a slightly bigger engine. Do you notice it? Well, it's hard to say because the Scrambler 400 XC is geared a little differently than most bikes that I've ridden. It's geared very low, so, I'm in 6th gear now and I'm only going a little over 50. If I drop it down to 5th, it's revving a little high. So basically what it means is when you come from a stop, I'll show you. I'll just stop over here and we'll go from 0. And you can kind of see how quickly through the gearbox you run. So that's first. That's second. That's third. This is fourth. So I'm already up in the 5th, and I'm only going a little over 40. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's just a thing, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. Because once you hit 6th, you've got a long way to go and nowhere else to shift to. Conversely, once you're into 6th, you have, 40 miles an hour of range to go through. You can go from 50, 60, 70, 80, probably up to, 90? I don't know. I don't know what the top speed is, and I can't really find out. On my way over here, I hit about 70 or so, and that's when the tachometer started flashing, warning me that, I'm about to grenade this brand new engine. So I didn't want to do that to Alice. But once it's through its braking period, then we can wind it out. But suffice it to say, at 70 miles an hour, this thing is absolutely solid and planted. It's kind of a fantastic ride. So if you're shopping for a bike in this class, and you're thinking about either this bike or the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, what are some of the big differences between the two bikes? Well, the first thing you might notice is that this bike sits up a little taller. Before I left the house, I sat on the Himalayan and then I came and sat on this. And I realized that I could pretty much completely flat foot the Himalayan, even with the Alaska butt pad sheepskin thing that I've got on the seat, which gives you a little bit more height. I was definitely able to flat foot the Himalayan. This one I'm almost able to flat foot, just with my heels slightly off the ground. Now I'm 5'10", I've got a 30-inch inseam. It's definitely not intimidating though. It actually feels just about right. The other nice thing about this bike compared to the Himalayan is it feels lighter. Not tremendously lighter, but it's definitely noticeable, and it's especially noticeable when you take it off the kickstand. The kickstand on the Scrambler 400XC is a lot more, let's just say long, and so it leaves the bike sitting almost straight up when it's on the kickstand. I personally find it incredibly irritating, and it's one of my biggest nitpicks about this bike, because when you put it on the side stand, it feels like a small breeze could blow this bike right over. Not to mention the fact that when you get on it and you sit on it, and you go to put the side stand back, you have to tilt the bike pretty much off balance to get that side stand to clear the ground, so you can swing it back. I don't know. I can't get over it. It drives me absolutely bonkers. But again, it's a nitpick. It's not a deal breaker, so I guess I can get over it at the end of the day. One of my other nitpicks about this bike, especially compared to the Himalayan 450, is that at low speeds, the throttle seems a little twitchy. So one of the absolute pleasures of riding the Himalayan is that it's just so compliant at low speeds. It's so much fun to just putz along at like 10 miles an hour because it's just so smooth and buttery. This bike isn't that. It's definitely got a twitch to it. When you hit the throttle, there's off and then there's on, and you can feel it. It's not as gradual, it's not as smooth as the Himalayan. And I could say that about, I guess, a bunch of things about this bike compared to the Himalayan. It's just not as smooth and buttery, if that makes any sense. The gearbox on this bike is really nice. It definitely clicks into each gear with authority. On the Himalayan, less so, but I prefer the Himalayan, I think, because it's just, I don't know, there's something a little bit more natural about the way the gearbox works on the Himalayan than it does on this. It's a little smoother. This one feels a little bit more mechanical. Not that that's a bad thing, I guess, but it is what it is. Here's another thing I'll say, I just reminded myself about, is when I take my hands off the handlebars on this bike, it is dead solid straight. It's really stable. It's a really stable, well-made feeling bike. Am I going to go down there? Huh. What a country. All right, here's the off-road portion of the review. So when I had the bike going 70 or so on the way over here, it tracked. It was solid. It felt more substantial at speed, I think, in an odd way than the Himalayan does. I don't know why. Not tremendously so. Not that anyone would probably even really notice, but at speed, this bike it just tracks really well. It's confidence inspiring, if you will. Hate that term. The XC, as opposed to just the regular X, comes with this thing here, which I think looks pretty badass. It comes with the headlight guard. I believe the fender here is different, higher or something. I don't know. Pretty much everything else I think is the same, except for, like I said, these tubeless tires, which are outstanding. Especially on a bike like this. You know, you might take this bike off-road a little bit, but you're not going to do anything huge. You're not going to be doing like super dual sport BDR type stuff. So tubeless tires on a bike like this make complete sense. One sort of bummer about this motorcycle and why it might disqualify it as a journey bike for me would be the size of the fuel tank. It's not inadequate, but compared to the Himalayan, this is 13 liter and the Himalayan is 17 liter, something like that. It's a pretty sizable difference. You could get by with this. I think the range on this is somewhere between 150 to 200, and the range on the Himalayan is definitely over 200. So, it is what it is. If that's important to you, then that's a thing. If it's not important to you, then don't worry about it. But I mean, look at it. It's Triumph quality. Even though it's made in India, it doesn't look any different, really, than any other Triumph. But at the end of the day, I would say the biggest difference for me, probably if I were deciding whether to buy this bike or the Royal Enfield Himalayan, comes down to the engine. Let's get back on the road and talk about the engine. So the engine on this bike isn't as smooth as it is on the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. I'm not sure a lot of people would really notice the difference, but I've really come to fall in love with the Sherpa engine on the Himalayan because it's buttery smooth. There's something about it that I can't really even put my finger on that makes that engine, for me, best in class. It's got character that this engine doesn't quite have. It's not that this engine doesn't have character, it's just a different kind of character. And I think it brings me back to my original point. This bike makes me feel a little rowdy, right? It's partly because of the way it looks, it's partly because of the way it sounds, and it's partly because of the characteristics of this engine. When I say it makes me feel a little rowdy, I'm not even saying that that's a bad thing. I'm actually saying that's a good thing. And it's one of the reasons that I would consider buying this bike. But I wouldn't buy it to replace my Himalayan. I would buy it as a third bike in my garage. It's different enough from the Himalayan, not just the engine, but the overall riding experience, that makes it its own sort of experience. I kind of just want to go do some bad stuff on this bike. Not that it's fast, I'm not going to rip my arms off goosing the throttle or anything like that. But I don't know, it's the riding position, the engine characteristics, the sound, and the looks sort of all come together to give me a riding experience that's a little bit more rowdy than what I feel like when I'm on the Himalayan. And so that's, I guess, at the end of the day, a really good thing, because it makes this bike stand out. And now if I continue being rowdy, I'm going to get arrested. So let's slow it down a little bit. As far as comfort goes, this bike is super comfortable. I really enjoy the riding position. Like I said, it's just a little bit taller, I think, than the Himalayan, so you feel like you're up a little higher and you can see over traffic a little bit. I noticed that yesterday on the freeway, that I felt taller, and it was kind of nice. One thing that the Himalayan is definitely better at, though, is the standing position. The standing position on this bike is not bad at all. It's actually really good. But the Himalayan, at least for me, is just about perfect. One thing I don't like about this Scrambler 400XC is the foot pegs. I know that the original 400X had foot pegs that really bent when you stood on them, and I'm finding that these do a little bit, not as much, I don't think, as the older model, but they do enough to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable about it. But anyway, this is the off-road portion of the test, and yeah, I don't feel as confident standing on this bike as I do on the Himalayan. The Himalayan, I don't know, the stance of it. Yeah, I don't know. Can't really. There's nothing wrong with this. In fact, it feels pretty damn stable on this gravel. Not that I'm pushing it too hard or anything, but I also don't want to, because again, this isn't my bike. So yeah, it feels good, and it feels good sitting down too when you're riding over this stuff. So I can't really complain. Could complain, but no one wants to hear it. On the looser gravel, it's a little bit all over the place, actually. That could be down to tires. That could be down to my inexperience riding this particular bike. But anyway, that's the off-road portion of the show. Right now, this is a situation where this kickstand could really get me in trouble. I'm on uneven ground, but it's not all that uneven. My Himalayan wouldn't even notice this, right? But I have to bend the bike pretty much this far just to clear the ground. And then when I put it up, it's almost straight up. And if I take my feet off the ground, I fall over. See? And that's no bueno. That is no bueno. I mean, you can tell. Let me unplug my heater here. You can tell that, yeah, the ground is a little bit uneven, but it's not that uneven. So that's something that could be improved, I think. Maybe just chop the kickstand off. I don't know. So I reached out to my Instagram and YouTube communities to see if anyone had any questions about the Scrambler 400X. Here are a couple of those questions. With what clarity does each bike speak to your nervous system in response to the road surface? I think this is a fantastic question.
And it comes down to the character of each bike, how they handle, how they're made, the build quality, and all that stuff. When I'm on the Himalayan 450, I feel confident and planted, like I could go anywhere. It's smooth, it's friendly, it's approachable. The Scrambler 400XC is almost all of those things, except it's a little bit more, I want to say rough. I'm not really sure exactly how to describe it. It's not as smooth of an experience as the Himalayan 450. The Himalayan has outstanding suspension. The suspension on the Scrambler is a little bit, I don't know, tighter, less refined, I guess. It could come down to personal preference. The Scrambler 400 sits a little bit higher, so when you're going at speed, you feel like you're a little bit more exposed. That might be a good thing or a bad thing. On the Himalayan, I feel a little bit more connected to the road. Even though I think the Scrambler is a little bit more nimble, I just feel a little bit more of a connection with the road when I'm on the Himalayan. Perhaps that's just because I've got 6,000 miles on the Himalayan and, 20 miles on this thing. This is a good question. Which bike causes fatigue quicker, especially in the wrists for someone who has carpal tunnel syndrome? One thing that surprised me about the Scrambler 400XC is how non-vibey it is. It's really smooth once you get the engine cranking, and even at low revs. The Himalayan is pretty smooth too, but if I had to tell you which one I thought was smoother on the wrists, I might go with the Scrambler 400. It's kind of a toss-up. The Scrambler 400 surprised me. I thought it was going to be a lot more vibey than what it is. At 5'10", with a 30-inch inseam, short legs, how is the ride height? Well, I'm 5'10" with a 30-inch inseam, and the ride height on this feels pretty good to me. If you're a brand new rider, it might be slightly intimidating, not being able to put your heels on the ground. But if you have any riding experience whatsoever, you're not going to find this a problem at all. Am I recording? Another question about suspension. How is it sprung? Too soft, jarring, or Goldilocks? It's sprung definitely, I would say, tighter, if that's a way of describing things, than the Himalayan 450. It's not bad. It's just the Himalayan 450 suspension, I think everyone agrees, is almost near perfect. This, it's a little rougher. When you're hitting bumps, you can feel them a little bit more. Hitting the twisties, it handles just great. So I have no complaints about the way it handles or anything like that. It's just a little bit rougher of a ride, nothing major. Someone asks how the clutch feels. It feels just fine to me. Maybe it's a little far out, but I'm sure it could be adjusted out, so I don't think that that's an issue. And it shifts pretty much dead on. It's definitely, compared to the Himalayan, it's more, I would say, I guess the best word to describe it is accurate. You can definitely feel it clicking into gear more than you can on the Himalayan. I just find the feel of the way the shifter on the Himalayan works is better for me. It's just a little bit more silky. You might not want that. You might want a more definitive click into gear, and if you do, then the Scrambler's better at that. Someone in the community asks if the engine is better, if it's more livable on a daily basis. No, it's not better. Again, the Himalayan 450's engine, I think, is top of the class. There's nothing wrong with this engine. It's great. It really is, and it sounds amazing with that exhaust. It's just, there's something about the Himalayan engine. Once you ride it, once you get used to it, you're kind of spoiled in this class, in the 400 to 450cc range. It'll spoil you. It will. All-day ergonomics on the Scrambler 400XC. I've got maybe 3 or 4 hours riding the bike right now, and I have no complaints. No back pain, no wrist pain. It's not bothering my wrists or my carpal tunnel at all. My knees, my shoulders, everything is fine. My neck, yeah, no complaints about that. One person asked if there's a lot of wind blast at higher speeds. I was doing about 70 over here, like I said, and yeah, I actually did notice that it was a little bit more of a windy ride than it is on the Himalayan. The Himalayan has a taller windscreen. It's not by much, I don't think. And probably, it's a more substantial bike, so it blocks a little bit more wind. And I think that's another huge difference between the Scrambler and the Himalayan. The Himalayan feels more of a substantial bike than this does, which is why I wouldn't consider probably taking this bike across the country, but I would take the Himalayan without question. Just that little bit bigger feeling of the Himalayan fills you with a little bit more confidence in doing long distance travel, I would assume. Also, the Himalayan has a lot more tie down points for carrying luggage and stuff like that. So I'm not saying I wouldn't take this bike across the country, but I would definitely prefer the Himalayan because of the Himalayan's all day comfort and all that stuff. Okay, last question, and this one had me really thinking. Does it feel more British or just as Indian as the Royal Enfield? And this is, I don't even know where to start with this one, but it's a good question. It definitely feels more British only in that it's a Triumph and it looks like a Triumph. And that's one of the things that Triumph nailed with this bike. Even though they're making it in India, it looks like a Triumph. It looks slightly different than, you know, a Scrambler 900 or a Scrambler 1200X, CE, whatever the hell they are. But you look at it, it looks like a Triumph. And so immediately you get the British Triumph vibes. But 99% of Triumphs these days aren't made in England. So what is a British bike anyway? India is knocking it out of the park when it comes to making motorcycles these days. And I have no qualms about buying an Indian bike. So the fact that this is an Indian bike is almost irrelevant to me. I would 1,000 times over buy an Indian bike before I'd buy a Chinese bike. And I'm at the point in my life where I would consider buying a Chinese bike. But India, they're killing it. This bike, the Royal Enfield Himalayan, all of the Royal Enfields, killing it. So, does it feel more British? Sure.
So what's my final verdict on the Triumph Scrambler 400XC? I love this thing. I really do. I remember when I first rode the Scrambler 400X back about 2 years ago, I left the demo thinking, I'm gonna go grab some money and go buy one of these today. That's how much I liked it back then. And I still really like this bike. It's fun. It's well built. It rides nicely. It's got enough power to make things interesting. It makes you feel a little bit rambunctious. and it's beautiful. You can't really deny it. It's beautiful if you like yellow, which I do, of course. For me, I'd still choose the Himalayan 450 if I had to choose one over the other. It's just because the Himalayan 450 for me does more of what I need. It's more purpose-built for touring and the types of journeys that I like to do. However, if I were going to add a third bike to my garage, along with my Himalayan and my Moto Guzzi V7 Sport, this might be the one. In fact, I'm seriously considering it. Maybe in the spring or the summer and I find one on the used market or something like that, even if it's just the 400X, because I'm not planning on touring with it or anything. I don't necessarily need tubeless tires. I would highly, highly prefer them. But, you know, for banging around on the island like this, or, you know, even going camping where the point of going camping is to find some fire roads and just bomb up and down them, this would be a really fun bike to do that on. I will say that with a price tag of somewhere between $6,800 and $7,000 US dollars, it's priced a little bit out of my range for a fun sort of throw around third bike. If this bike were somewhere closer to $6,000, somewhere closer to the Himalayan's price tag of about what, $6,200, $6,300, I would say it would be an easier choice as to whether this would be a good investment for a third bike. But when we're pushing $7,000, you know, there are a lot of other bikes on the market that are pushing $7,000. That might be as good, if not better. Might be as more fun, if not more fun, than this Scrambler 400XC. Again, that's not to say that this is a bad bike, or even to say that it's not worth the almost $7,000 price tag. But for a 398cc entry-level bike, $7,000 to me is kind of pushing it. That's all I'm saying. Like I said, it's a little bit more nimble than the Himalayan, so if you're into that sort of thing, if you really want to like bang this thing through the twisties and stuff like that, then this might be a better choice. I don't know. There's nothing you can do on this that you can't do on the Himalayan. And to a certain extent, there's nothing that you can do on the Himalayan that you can't do on this. You could certainly strap luggage to this. One of those rackless pannier systems would work quite well. Whatever. It's just how you want to do it, is what it comes down to. This bike has that look-back factor. You know, you park it outside, and you turn around and look at it as you're walking into wherever you're going. And a lot of people will say that the Himalayan doesn't have that. I disagree. I think the Himalayan is a beautiful looking bike. Maybe I'm the only person in the world that, on a certain level, prefers the look of the Himalayan over the look of the Scrambler 400X. And the flip side to that, of course, is that I love the look of this bike. So, looks-wise, I couldn't lose either way. This bike is just fun, man. It's just fun. And if that's what you want, if you want just a purely fun bike, this might be the way to go. Here's one thing I'll say about this bike that might answer a question that a lot of people have. Does it feel underpowered? And I would say no, actually it doesn't. Even though on paper it's 50 cc's less than the Himalayan 450, I'd say that they're fairly evenly matched as far as power. However, it is kind of hard to tell because of the gearing on this bike. Since it's a little odd, it makes it difficult to compare one to the other. But either way, the engine on this bike is definitely fun. It's definitely not going to leave you flat. It's not going to leave you bored. It's very nice, actually. So my final verdict on the Scrambler 400XC is, yeah, I want one. I want one now. But I wouldn't replace my Himalayan, it would be an addition. I've really fallen in love with the Himalayan. I know that you're probably all sick of hearing it, but I just love that bike. For me, it's just perfect in so many ways. This bike approaches it, and if the Himalayan didn't exist, I would 100% be on this bike. But the Himalayan does exist, and it's cheaper, and it's more purpose-built to the type of riding that I want to do. So I'm sticking with the Himalayan, but I could definitely see one of these popping into my garage at some point soon. The small capacity single cylinder engines, for me, it's where it's at right now. I'm really hoping that the industry keeps trending this way, because these bikes are so super fun, they're so economical, they're cheaper to work on and maintain, they're cheaper to buy, and man, they're just so capable. You may want more than this bike, but most people don't need more than this bike. And I can say that for a lot of the bikes in this class. I'm really digging on the small single-cylinder engines. Anyway, it's probably time for me to get this bike back to Alice, so if you enjoyed this video, I hope you click the like button, and if you're not already, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. And if you're not doing anything over the next 15 or 20 minutes, give this video over here a quick look. It might be one of my best. It's probably not. And I'll talk to you later. Catch you on the next one.